Hello everybody. In today's lesson, you will discover 20 movies that are excellent for you to practice your English with, expand your vocabulary, and improve your listening skills so you can start to understand natives without subtitles, even when they speak fast. At the end of the lesson, we'll give you tips on how you can select the best movies for you to learn with yourself beyond the films that we're sharing with you today. And we'll teach you a method for you to watch and learn at the same time. And by the way, do you want to be able to understand everything that Ethan and I are saying on this podcast, all the advanced words and expressions? If so, you want to watch this lesson on the RealLife app because we give you interactive subtitles that you can tap on and vocabulary flashcards so you never forget the words you're learning. To start, click the link in the description below to go straight to the RealLife app on your phone and unlock this lesson, and we'll continue watching and having fun over there. Ah, yeah. All right, Ethan. So I'm really excited about today's lesson because basically watching movies and learning with them was probably my number one method for learning English. And today we're covering 20 excellent movies that will help you guys improve your English to go from intermediate to advanced. So we're covering these three categories of movies, going from intermediate to advanced, all the way to pro.
I'm really excited about it too, just getting to think about some of these movies, and it's kind of a throwback to my childhood. I tried to bring some that had a really big impact on me. So look forward to sharing those with you guys as well.
So this first category of movies is for intermediate level learners. So all of you guys who can understand us on this podcast, but you struggle with movies in general, this is for you. So my first one is Finding Nemo. Now this is a total classic that, besides being an animation, I think is really easy to follow. So it's a really perfect one to start. And the reason why it's really great for you to learn English is exactly in the narrative. So as you guys probably know, it's about this fish, Marlin, who embarks on his epic journey across the ocean to find his son. But he's really afraid of the ocean. So he really feels like a fish out of water there. But then he starts to meet all these different sea creatures who help him overcome his fears.
I remember seeing this one when it came out in theaters with my friend Haley, and just we were laughing our asses off. Sorry for the language. But Ellen DeGeneres' character, Dory, is just unforgettable.
Sorry, I suffer from short-term memory loss.
So if you haven't seen it, it's definitely a great one to check out and learn English with.
Just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep learning English. So the first one that I added for my list was Dodgeball. And this just has amazing performances as well from Ben Stiller and Vince Vaughn. They have the best dynamic together. And when I was a teenager, I loved both their movies. They had a lot of comedies in the 2000s. And it's a hilarious underdog story where you're really rooting for the weaker team to prevail, but you're laughing the entire time. And there's also a lot of physical comedy in it. So even if you don't understand all of the jokes, you'll still be laughing along a lot. And as you're learning, you'll understand the jokes better, right? And just for me, it was one that I watched many times when I was a teenager, so you can watch it over and over again. We watched it all the time with my brother, and I still remember a lot of the lines from it. So definitely check it out.
What is an underdog story?
An underdog is in a competition, the team or the person who has lower chances to win. So in general, everyone loves an underdog story because we love seeing the person who no one believes in actually be able to overcome something and be able to become a champion.
Nice. And the name of the sport is dodgeball, and it has this word dodge in it. What does it mean to dodge?
Dodge means that you avoid something. And it's actually really hilarious, the whole premise of this movie, because it's something we play when we're in school, where it's two teams trying to throw balls at each other and trying to not get hit, because if you get hit, you're out. But it's adults playing this game. So already just the premise or the theme of the movie is very humorous. By the way, guys, Izzy and I are sharing some of our favorite movies and that we believe will be really helpful for learning English. But we're really curious too, what are some movies that you have watched in English or that you have found really helpful? So share them down below with your fellow Real Life English community members. And maybe you'll also want to take a look there and see if you can discover even more movies.
Okay, so before we continue, let me just say this to our viewers and listeners, that if you want to get more lessons like this that help you understand fast-speaking natives, hit the subscribe button and also the bell down below so you don't miss any of these lessons. And on to my next movie, that is School of Rock.
Ooh, I love this
Now,
one.
this one has a really it has a really wacky story, right? It's about this musician who poses as a teacher. He pretends to be a teacher and goes to work at this fancy school for rich kids. So when he gets there, instead of teaching regular school subjects, he secretly turns his class into a rock band. So why am I recommending it for learning English? I think Jack Black, the actor who plays the protagonist, he really has this larger than life personality. So he's always using different phrasal verbs and slang, like "let's go kick some ass" or "shred the guitar," you know.
That's amazing. I watched that one over and over again. I remember before bed as well, so can highly recommend it. I'm gonna throw at you guys another animated movie. It's not Disney. It's called Rio, and this one I've seen multiple times, but it has a near and dear place in my heart because it's the first movie I watched in Portuguese. I watched the dub version before I moved to Brazil, and it's an adorable story. I think that it's great for basic learners because it has simple vocabulary. It's pretty easy to follow, and you also get really immersed in the colorful Brazilian culture. So definitely give it a watch.
Yeah, I think adorable is the perfect word there to describe it. But it's interesting, like you've been to Rio, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the depiction of the city is pretty accurate in a lot of ways. All the colors, right? The vibe.
Yeah, they don't like try to hide the favelas or anything like that. It all is integrated into the story, right?
All right, so my next one is The Devil Wears Prada. So let me just say why this is really great for learning English. It's the first one on our list here that is awesome for learning English for business. And it gives you all these different office dynamics also that you can see there. So the story is basically about this woman who lands a job as an assistant to this head of a fashion magazine in New York, which, by the way, is known as one of the worst bosses ever in pop culture, right? Miranda Priestley, I think is her name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that one as well. It's a favorite. And it's funny you mentioned about business English because it reminded me that we actually did a lesson with this on our other channel, Learning Show TV series. So people who are fans of that or want to get a taste of it might want to check that out. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, my next one is this really beautiful movie called La La Land. And I've watched this romantic drama several times. I find the story really moving, and that's probably what a lot of people feel because it won a bunch of different Oscars. And I think this is the only one we're going to have on the list that's, at least that's not animated, that is a musical. And Izzy and I talk about this all the time, that for both of us learning languages, music has formed a really integral tool for us. So after watching this movie, I got addicted to the soundtrack. I listened to it over and over again. So you can almost kill two birds with one stone, right? By watching the movie and then listening to the music.
I think that there's that classic scene where they dance in the park. It's so like charming. Mm-hmm. And you said the movie is moving. What does that mean?
If something moves you, it somehow impacts you emotionally. And this does that in many different ways. I don't want to say anything else to give any spoilers, but just go check it out.
Okay, so my next one is called The Truman Show. Now, this is one from the 90s, and it's probably one of the ones that I can remember from my childhood that I watched the most. It's about this guy called Truman. If you haven't seen it, but I think most people have watched it, but it's about this guy called Truman who lives a pretty ordinary life until he begins to suspect that something strange is going on. You know, so what happens is that his entire life is just a carefully constructed reality show, and he doesn't know that that's happening. So this is really great for learning English because you get to see Truman going about his day, you know, so it's great for learning everyday language.
Man, it made me think that I also grew up with so many of these Jim Carrey movies, and he was just someone who I identified with as one of the best comic actors. But then in this movie, he really showed his chops also as a dramatic actor. So I think that he's someone I would really admire and that I believe is a great person to learn English with. By the way, he used a really nice expression that he's going about his day. That's kind of an interesting combination of words. What does it mean?
It's pretty much like when you're talking about somebody going through their daily routine. So they're going about their day.
Mm-hmm. It's usually used to present that then there was a twist or something happened. So you could even use this if you're maybe telling a story. You could say, I was just going about my day, and people will be expecting you're going to share something surprising that happened, right? Which
is exactly what happens in the movie. So, and that's no spoilers there because that happens early in the movie. But anyway, what's the next one?
So I chose one for so many of you that love cooking and food. This one is called Julie and Julia, and it's going to be perfect for you if that's you. it's a feel-good movie that follows two true stories at once. So one of them is about the famous American chef Julia Childs, and the second one is about a young woman who is named Julie. That's why it's Julie and Julia, and she's stuck in a rut. And so she decides to challenge herself by cooking all of the recipes in Julia Child's cookbook. And after watching this movie, I actually bought Julia Child's cookbook and I tried to make many of the recipes in it myself. And it was in the same period that I was learning French. So I would have this whole sort of ritual with it that I would whack on some music, I'd open a bottle of French wine, and I'd be cooking these recipes. So not only was I learning how to cook, but I was having this whole French cultural immersion that really helped to motivate me in learning French. So I believe this one for English learners, it shouldn't be too challenging, but there is some more specific vocabulary related to cooking and food that you might need to be looking up while you're watching it.
Wow. I think this movie is so you, Ethan, because I still remember the day like you made risotto for us here in Brazil. You came to Rio,
Right.
to 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗶𝗳𝗏, and you made us some risotto. So yeah, from that day on, like I was just thinking like, yeah, Ethan is a guy who likes to cook, so he must love all things food.
Yeah.
And there you go.
I don't eat meat, at least red meat nowadays, so a lot of the recipes are off limits in that cookbook. But when I was younger and I ate meat, there's a lot of delicious things, but I'm sure things could be adapted to vegetarianism. So what's your next pick, Izzy?
Okay, so my next one is The Lion King, which is not just one of the best movies ever, that is acknowledged by most people, but is really great for learning English too. I think characters that have really clear, articulate speech, and if you combine that with all the memorable quotes, I think this movie just has really a legendary status for language learning. I watched it many times when I was at an intermediate level myself.
I think it's the first movie that made me cry. So if people haven't, you're probably living under a rock if you haven't seen it, meaning that we use that expression, living under a rock, when it's something that everyone knows, but maybe as the case for most people, you might have only watched it ever in your native language, right? The next one on my list is, so I did one for cooking. The next one is for something else I'm passionate about, which is travel. And the one I chose was Eat, Pray, Love. And this is another one that's based on a true story of Liz Gilbert, who's the author also of the book that came before the movie. And it's a really perfect one because you get a taste of three different, very strong cultures. So Italy, India, and Bali, and how this character Liz is adapting to all of them as she's traveling around the world. And I just find her evolution throughout the film just so compelling.
Yeah, and I love stories about self-discovery. This movie just really has that because you with the character, you kind of evolve, and you go through an experience that it really connects you with your own self-discovery journey.
All right, so our next category is for those of you who are a bit more advanced. You might understand simple TV series like Friends or animated movies without subtitles, and these next ones will help you to challenge yourself a little bit more. But before we do that, let's say thanks to our Learner of the Week.
All right, so this comes from a fan called Alem, and they wrote in their message that the RealLife app is really fantastic because it enables them to activate and improve their listening and speaking skills, including gaining a wide range of vocabulary in every lesson, and the flashcards, which assist them in studying new vocab and keeping memorizing them. Ah, yeah, Alem, that was well said. And if you guys out there, if you want to be able to speak English just like I'm doing right now, you should know that we developed the RealLife app based on a method that I used and that thousands of other learners just like you used to gain advanced fluency. So do it just like Alem and activate your English and gain a wide range of vocabulary by downloading the RealLife app. I'm going to leave the link in the description below. And you can also search for RealLife English on Google Play or Apple's App Store, and I'll see you there.
So Tom Hanks, I think, is a really great actor for English learners because he tends to speak slowly and clearly. So I wanted to include a movie from him on the list, and I chose a more recent one called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And this one follows Mr. Rogers, who was a real person, the star of a children's show that I watched when I was growing up. And it's a really heartwarming, true story about this kind, humble, and charitable man that really helps you to get in touch with American culture by watching this movie, because Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that's the name of this kid's show, is one that probably like anyone my age watched when they were growing up, and even older, because it was on the air for like 40 years or something like that.
I said I love movies that show a story of self-discovery, but I also love movies that show the power of kindness, which is totally what this is all about, right? And it shows how kindness can be a virtuous cycle, and it can create that ripple effect even.
Yeah.
Right.
I think this one can really put you into a reflective mood. So it'd be a good one if you're feeling like you want something that you can go a little bit deeper with. By the way, Izzy, what is a ripple effect?
It's like a domino effect. I think this expression exists in most languages, right? Where one thing happens and then it affects another thing, which affects another thing.
Nice.
So my next one is August Rush, which is probably in my top 3 movies of all time. And that's not for a technical reason. I don't think it's recognized as one of the best movies ever. But for me, I just love it. It's about this musically gifted orphan who uses his talent, his musical talent, to try to find his birth parents. So if you like music, if you guys like music, this one is especially connected to music more spiritually, I would say. You know, there's even this quote that says, the music is all around us. All you have to do is listen.
That's a really beautiful movie as well. I have really good memories because it's also one of my mom, probably like her top 3 or top 5 movies of all time. And so I watched it several times with her when I was coming up. And whenever I think about that movie, I tend to think about my mom.
Surprising to hear that it is also in somebody else's top 5 or top 3. It's really great for learning English, by the way, because it's set in the streets of New York. So there's a lot of street language there.
So the next one is one of Jordy and Maya's favorite heist movies to watch together. It's called Now You See Me. It's all about magicians. And I think that this one is definitely a more challenging one on the list because there's a lot of twists and turns in the plot. It has faster speech in general from the characters, from the actors. And also you have some jargon about magic that most people might not recognize. And sometimes with these heist movies, you think like you've seen it once and you can't watch it again. But I think this one's great because even once you've seen it, you'll want to go back and watch it because there's all sorts of details that you might not have caught the first time through, you know?
By the way, the name of the movie, Now You See Me, what does that mean? What does that refer to?
Yeah, it comes from some sort of magical trick. It's like, now you see me, now you don't, where they disappear.
Nice. Okay, so my next one on this list is Shrek. Now, you might be surprised that this one is for more advanced learners because it is an animation, but it really is that great for advanced learners because Shrek and Donkey, they keep having these hilarious conversations where they use so many idiomatic expressions, phrasal verbs, slang, and it's so intricate and well-crafted, you know, that it's just perfect for learning all these expressions. And yeah, don't overlook this movie. I know Shrek doesn't need any introduction. Everybody knows it, but use it for learning English. It's really awesome.
Not to mention that Shrek has a Scottish accent, and it's a mild one, but that still might be something a lot of learners are unfamiliar with. And a lot of conversations they had, like you said, they're philosophical almost. So you might miss things the first time around. So similarly, my next one might be one that people have already seen, but maybe not in English yet. It's Hunger Games. And I chose this because I was trying to think of series that many people really love, just like the world that it's out of. So I thought first of Harry Potter, but I think almost everyone has seen that. And I wanted to do something that might be newer or less familiar for other people. Series like this, like Hunger Games, Harry Potter, they're really great because there's several movies, you can watch them over and over again. Hunger Games in particular, I think it's the first book, because they were books before movies, that I stayed up all night reading it. It really just has you hooked the entire time. It's incredible. And yeah, I'm not going to say too much about this one because I think most of you probably are somewhat aware of it, but it's pretty easy to follow as far as the language is concerned, but there is some advanced vocab that would say makes it more of an advanced movie.
Totally. All right, so my next one is National Treasure, and it is another one that's on my maybe top 5 list of movies ever. And I know it's quite weird for me to say that. It's probably not in anyone else's list, but it is on mine because I watched it so many times, again, for improving my English. You know, because let me just say this. There is such a thing as watching a movie for learning purposes. You can watch it for fun, but if you add that layer of activating your English with it, I think you can get a lot from that. And because I did that so much, this movie just became really special for me. So it's about this guy who is a historian and also a treasure hunter, and he embarks on this quest to find this treasure that dates back to the founding fathers of the United States. So it's really crazy story, almost like this wild goose chase, you know?
I'm curious if people would know what the founding fathers are. That to me sounds like a very American term.
Yeah, the founding fathers. It's basically the figures, the people who were there to found the United States, to declare the independence of the country.
Yes, people like Washington, who was the first president, Benjamin Franklin was very instrumental, Thomas Jefferson. So a lot of these people who helped to form the Constitution. I'd say it's a great movie too for that, because it's got some of the sort of political history of the founding of the United States in it. Finally, you mentioned a wild goose chase. What is that?
A wild goose chase is when you're searching for something and you're just not successful with it, and you keep doing it. And you're in the case of this movie, everybody knows that he's this treasure hunter who never finds the treasure. So that's exactly what's happening there. It's a wild goose chase because he's never really succeeding in finding a treasure. All right, so now let's move on to the next category of movies, and these are for the pros. You know, if you guys feel that you're really experienced and you want to challenge yourselves with these ones, these are the most advanced ones on our list. What is that first one on your list, Ethan?
All right, so my last two. So this one was a Netflix film from just a few years ago, and it really blew my mind. It's called Don't Look Up, and it's hilarious while also being kind of sad about how true the situation that they're covering in it is. It has this really star-studded cast like Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Meryl Streep, and so many more. And I think it's going to be one of these ones that's quite challenging because it's a political satire. So that means that it's a bit more complex in the humor and everything, but it's definitely a great challenge for some of you more advanced learners.
It really has that double meaning there. And what's a satire, by the way?
A satire is something that pokes fun in a creative way at a situation. And so political satire, it's kind of making fun of how politicians react to difficult things that are happening and how they're, I don't know, very motivated, for example, by money and things like that, even when it's something that it's maybe questioning survival of the human race.
Funny you mentioned Leo DiCaprio. My next movie also features him. So this one is Catch Me If You Can. And it's really great for learning English. First of all, I should say that because it has this huge range of different American accents and both formal and informal speech in a million different situations. Because what happens is that Leo DiCaprio's character, he's a con artist who impersonates a pilot, a doctor, a lawyer, and he travels the entire country forging checks of like millions of dollars. And then Tom Hanks, the other guy, is an FBI agent trying to catch him. So yeah, two great actors there and an amazing story.
I believe it's based on a true story as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is also based on a true story. Yeah.
And you said he's forging checks. Maybe people won't be familiar with what it means to forge a check.
Yeah, if you forge a document or a check, you are creating one that's not authentic, right? It's a false one, it's a fake one, but you're using it as if it were real.
All right. So I really like that you had that one actually, because it's a similar theme to the last one on my list. And this is one of my favorite movies of all time, for sure. It's called Into the Wild. I put it as the last one because it covers some advanced philosophical themes that I think could make it more challenging to understand some of the nuances, some of the details. And it also has various American accents, and some of the characters might be more difficult to understand. It's another one that's based on a true story, and it really captures this spirit of adventure. I think that for me, it was really impactful when I was in high school and college, because it was a time also when I was sort of discovering myself, and that I also had experiences traveling and so on. And I just watched the trailer again in preparation for this lesson, and it like gave me chills. So it's a really powerful film. I think it was also popular at the time. And there's many great messages in this, but one of it I think is about connecting with people who are different from us, because this main character, Alexander, is traveling all across the United States and meeting all these different sorts of people. And for me, it reminds me of our big purpose here at RealLife English, which is no matter what divides us, that which unites us is far greater. So it's a great global citizen movie, I'd say as well.
Yeah, and something else I should say about this movie, at least that I feel more personally, is that I don't know if you know. Did you know that it's a dream of mine to actually travel to Alaska?
Oh man, that's amazing. Don't learn from, or do learn from his mistakes.
Yeah, well,
don't want to say anything else
I wouldn't
for
do
any
it like
spoilers, but
right. Now, Alaska is really the wildest of the wild in North America, right? Which, by the way, what is that? Like, the name of the movie is Into the Wild. What does that mean?
Yeah, the wild is like away from civilization, which is really what this guy is all about. Is he's trying to break free of the capitalist, consumerist culture of the United States.
Anyway, so my next one and final one as well is also based on a true story. This is fascinating. So
A lot of
this
true
one
stories.
is based on a true story. Into the Wild, Catch Me If You Can, and Don't Look Up is a satire based on what's happening. So nice. It's funny, like the more advanced you get, the more real life you get. Okay, so this one is The Pursuit of Happiness. There's a good chance you guys have seen it, but let me tell you that there's a lot in that movie that maybe you didn't catch because there's so much culture in it. About the United States and also business English. He works at this office as a stockbroker. He wants to land a job as a stockbroker in his financial firm. So it's full of connected speech because Will Smith, he really digs connected speech. So you're going to get a lot of that too. And it's an inspiring story. One of my favorite stories. So I usually watch that movie once a year, just to get that
Amazing.
Shot of inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a truly powerful story. And maybe it's no surprise that one of our most popular lessons on our Learning Through TV series channel is with this movie. So again, that might be a good way for you to get started before you go watch the full movie. So we wanted to quickly share with you guys, if you go through this list and you're looking for more movies to watch, how you can choose your own movies and also how you can learn with them. So when you're choosing a movie, it's really valuable, like Izzy and I have mentioned with several of these, to choose something that you've already seen. Because if you've already seen it in your native language or you've already seen it once you know the story, that's going to help you to understand. And also, we've been talking about how repetition is very important, right? So you want to choose movies that you won't mind watching over and over again. So that probably won't be something that's really intense or that is maybe super artsy or something like this that you will get bored with quickly if you're trying to rewatch it. And I'd say that depending on your level, you might want to choose something that has a more simple theme or a more complex theme or even specific topics. So if you're at a more basic level, you might want to look for something that's more of a light, feel-good movie. When we say like a feel-good, it's like one that you don't have to think too much about. It doesn't have any deep, underlying message or anything like that. That'll be a lot easier to understand than, for example, an Oscar winner. But you might want to challenge yourself with that if you're more advanced, or even if, say, you're a doctor, maybe you want to watch How to Kill a Mockingbird or another movie that has sort of a legal core to it, for example.
Those are some great tips for actually picking the right movies. Mm-hmm. Now, when you start watching it, like I remember my own method for learning, and I do know that you've learned, for example, Catalan, also watching different movies series, right? Mm-hmm. So what would you say is your method for learning a language with a movie?
Yeah, I'd say it's very similar to what we do over on Learning Through TV series, right? I would recommend watching it all the way through. If you're very basic, you can even watch it, the dubbed version in your native language, but with most people who are intermediate, you should probably start with subtitles either in your native language or in English. And then you can go back. You don't have to watch the whole thing again, but you could go back to certain scenes that maybe you took note of that you found especially difficult to understand and watch those scenes again with subtitles. And all the while taking note of advanced vocabulary, expressions, difficult pronunciation, or connected speech. So you're really watching, just being very curious about the language within that scene, right? Mm-hmm. Finally, then you're going to feel more prepared to watch again without subtitles. So you're sort of testing your learning. And you could even add on top of this by imitating the characters. So you're working your pronunciation and your comprehension.
It's a complete experience. It's sort of amazing how most people miss that. If you use that to your advantage, it's fantastic. So in a real life way, we have 3 superpowers that we talk about. That is to live your English, which most people also overlook that English is something that you want to make a part of your life. Mm-hmm. And you should activate your English. And movies are great because you can do that. And if it's a movie that's special to you, that you really connect with, with your identity, with your personality, you're also connecting it with your English, which is the 3rd superpower. So it's one habit, one practice that has it all, and inside of activate it, we have two essentials that we talk about. That is deliberate practice and be curious. Always be curious, right? So you already mentioned being curious, and remember that you're watching movies with the intention of learning. So you are deliberately, intentionally practicing that. Don't feel like, oh man, I want to watch this again. That's not the point. You're missing the angle there if you're thinking that. Really take advantage of the fact that you're watching it to get curious and to practice the sounds over and over again. Repeat and really master the connected speech, the vocabulary in there.
You could spend an entire week, right, just studying one movie, and maybe your reward at the end of the week is to watch it all the way through without subtitles and just enjoy the story, enjoy the fruits of your labor. In other words, enjoy actually understanding it without subtitles, and give yourself a pat on the back for that accomplishment.
Yeah, and you can tell other people, you know what, I learned English with movies. I actually talked about this in a newsletter I sent. You guys can subscribe to our newsletter. I'll leave the link in the description. And if you're listening to us, you can subscribe by typing in your browser reallifeglobal.com/newsletter. And yeah, I gave several tips about that too, which, as I said, that was my number one habit for learning English, which was obsessing over the same movie or the same series and just watching the same episode or movie over and over again. All right, Ethan, this was fantastic. And yeah, we should do this more often, not just with movies, other TV series, I don't know. So you guys can let us know in the comments below if you want us to do more lessons like this, maybe with books. You can tell us what would be your kind of media that you prefer, maybe podcasts too, right?
So this has been 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗶𝗀𝗟𝗏. If you guys are enjoying these lessons, a free way for you to support us is by, again, hit the subscribe button and the bell down below, or follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single new lesson. Also, if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcast service, leave us a 5-star review. This really helps us to get out to other learners from around the world who want to take their English to the next level. And of course, if you are not yet watching and listening to this on the Real Life English app, that is the best possible experience you're going to get. You can get vocabulary flashcards for all of the difficult expressions and vocabulary that we've used today, and never forget them with that smart flashcard technology. And so much more for you to discover there. So be sure to download that in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store for free right now.
All right, so thank you, Ethan, for joining me in this one. It was a lot of fun. And guys, as we always say on this podcast, no matter what divides us, that which unites us is far greater. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I have noticed that most of my friends who have started learning English through courses or even online, they complain to me over and over about the same issue, that they can't improve their speaking skills because they're not friends with any natives, or because they don't live in an English-speaking country, or even because they can't pay for an exchange program. So is this by any chance how you feel? If so, I'm gonna tell you the truth. If you don't live in an English-speaking country, you'll have to